interesting thing as well is that at this time they used to show how much fuel they had used up at each point. And in the first stint, Mercedes used less than everyone else,
Yeah.
even though they were still like a second a lap faster and having a go at each other. It was just such a huge advantage. But I think Rosberg had basically he tried at the first lap, first couple, and realized, okay, I can't pass him, so he got himself out of DRS range. But then was it very easy to get himself back in that near the end of the stint, and this would have compromised both him and Lewis in terms of tyre saving because it meant they were both pushing each other harder than they probably wanted to.
Well, I'm not sure if that's because Nico understood that, but he was the only one, with Daniel Ricciardo, to go for the alternate strategy, which was not 2-stop or 3-stop, but soft, medium, soft. They were the only two drivers to do that. I'm wondering if Nico didn't do that just for his second stint to just be focusing on himself. And actually, during that second stint, as you said, he was lapping well. He was impressing on those mediums because those mediums were meant to be the annoying compound of the weekend. They were meant to be the compound that was 2 seconds slower, and he was doing the job. But for some reason, that third stint on the softs just didn't work at all for him. And well, at the same time, Lewis was having a 22 lap stint on softs, which is also extremely impressive. And on fuel percentages, I had forgotten that they put the fuel used on as a graphic, and they kept just putting it back every 2 or 3 laps, a bit like we see with AWS predictions nowadays. It's like they had found a new toy and they had to show us. And obviously, in the end, it didn't matter because we had 5 laps of safety car.
Yeah, I mean, Rosberg had the fastest lap of the race near the end of the race, so he had the pace. Rosberg had the faster car. Hamilton had the wider one. So, I mean, ultimately, I don't really know. You know, I don't look at that as a great duel. I look at that as, wow, if Fernando Alonso or somebody else was in that Mercedes, that race would have been over. Because in the final stint, I mean, somebody would have made that pass. Yeah. I'm sure Kimi would have made that pass. I'm sure Daniel Ricciardo would have gone for it. And I think this is the thing. I mean, if you're like, people think that, Nico Rosberg, this and that, like, Nico Rosberg had a dream ticket for 4 years. He basically was in a car that was a second a lap quicker than any other car. And even if he had a bad race, he would still finish second. So, he was in a position where he could challenge Lewis. And sometimes he did come out on top, but very rarely was that because of a wheel-to-wheel duel. And to me, that's a huge part of racing. I mean, that's to me the difference between a very good driver and a quick driver and a great driver. You need to be able to race wheel-to-wheel. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, can you pass another driver when you need to do it? And I don't know. It was to me, it was just absurd to see somebody with such a tire advantage just continuously get stifled. And then people started like praising both drivers after, and I don't know what on earth was going on there. So it comes down to racecraft. It comes down to racecraft. He had the speed, and Nico's always had the speed, but he doesn't have the racecraft, in my opinion.
Most of his advantage in races where he did win, it was qualifying, because he won the qualifying battle in 2014 and again in 2016, I believe. So he's kind of got one up, at least if you compare him to Bottas against Hamilton, because Bottas was very, very close to Hamilton on qualifying pace, didn't that often actually beat him, whereas Rosberg did relatively frequently actually beat him, and that meant he was at least ahead when the race started. And you could battle harder with him, but it's, again, when you look at the rivalry, is that across the 3 years, there aren't actually that many races where they were having close wheel-to-wheel racing.
Exactly.
I think again the reason this was so popular is because it was very clean, and we'd seen hardly any racing in 2013. It was multi 21 was pretty much the only time we saw any that kind of battle. And then suddenly we have this, and obviously because the team have let them race, and they said, I mean, at the end they kind of just rather cryptically said, just bring the cars home. So they didn't outright say no, you can't pass. They just keep it clean, and they managed to. And obviously, I think that's what people like because we've seen, Max and Hamilton. It wasn't quite so clean with them in their battles.
No, it wasn't. But Nico and Lewis had their moments. I think Austria 2016 was pathetic. I mean, I don't know what that was. And then the Spa incident was a bit unnecessary. Spain 2016 was just... I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, that was embarrassing.
A literal car crash, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was really Lewis's fault, to be honest. To Nico's credit, he did make a great move. Lewis drove it was just pathetic. I mean, I've never seen a teammate crash that was so unnecessary.
I think they said that Rosberg was in the wrong engine mode or something, which was how Lewis caught up to him so quickly.
Yeah, but still, I mean, Lewis drove onto the grass. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, Ben, back off. Why are you turning right onto the grass with such aggression? I mean, that's really... Lewis said, didn't he, that he felt like retiring after that race. Anyways, not to get off topic, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, you were mentioning the differences between Rosberg and Bottas. I think another big difference was that Nico Rosberg was good on starts, or at least decent, whereas Bottas, he had that famous jump start, but other than that, he was often prone to not leading into lap one. Nico, very fast qualifier, and often, at least for the first few laps, was ahead.
So one thing I want to touch on, though, and I agree with that assessment, is if you look at the final standings of this race, it's almost like flying formation. You got two Mercedes, you got the two Force Indias, a Red Bull splitting them, the Red Bull after that, two Williams, two Ferraris. It's shocking to me that Ferrari probably wouldn't have scored points with both cars had the McLarens not broken down.